I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and today we're going to take a first look at the new Audi RS3 together. So, the Audi RS3, there's no avoiding, this is a truly special car for those of us that like maximum performance in a package that's basically as small and relatively light as possible. And of course, for those of us that love and will one day miss Audi's classic inline 5-cylinder petrol engine. It's almost surprising, to tell you the truth, that the RS3 got another generation. Very aggressive emissions targets now entering force in the European Union and of course impacting the kind of European cars that come to Australia. And Audi and the broader Volkswagen group have a huge burden in order to control those emissions. So how have they got the new RS3 over the line? Well, there are plenty of performance increases to even higher highs for the engine itself, but there's also higher performing emissions controls fitted to it, but we'll get to some of that stuff later on. First of all, let's just take a look at the car to start with. We'll talk about the design, then we'll have a chat about the engine, the gearbox, the all-new all-wheel drive system, and then we'll check out the interior before chatting about potential prices and release dates here in Australia. But first of all, design. Well, like every other new RS product that Audi have released in the last few years, the visual design of this car has really taken several steps up in terms of aggression, hasn't it? And I've got a theory as to why this is the case, because Audi RS used to make vehicles that were ludicrously fast, but they were very subtle to look at. Unless you were an Audi spotter, you didn't really know you were looking at an RS3 or an RS6, for example. So why have they changed this? Well, performance now comes from virtually every corner of the market. Not just EVs, combustion cars are much faster today than they ever were in the past. So just creating a fast car isn't special anymore. Now, if you think back 15 years ago, the standard petrol engine you would get in something like an Audi A3 was genuinely quite slow, whereas something in an RS3 or an RS6 or whatever was much higher performance. That gulf has really closed now, and so the differentiator in a lot of ways is the way that the car looks, and the design has to be super aggressive as well. And the RS3 follows the new RS6, RS7, RSQ8 in this vein of going to a much more amped up visual design. So that means the usual flared guards, big exhaust, body kit, but it also means this really aggressive family front end that Audi's RS cars are picking up, especially here with this really quite dominant black mask, almost like it's taken some inspiration from the pandemic. That sadly means I'm not standing next to an RS3 in Ingolstadt, but I'm here in cities locked down, but we push on. And speaking of pushing, Audi is really pushing the black pack quite hard on the new RS3. You can get the matte aluminium styling package that has always been a hallmark of fast Audis, but none of the cars demonstrated in the press pack even have it. So black seemingly is the order of the day, and you can even extend the black to the roof now in the new RS3. But there are bold exterior colours you can choose for this car. We've got red and green examples here on the hatchback or the Sportback and the Sedan that are presented in these early press pictures that we're talking through. And just like the outgoing generation, the RS3 will indeed continue to be offered in Sportback and in Sedan. The Sedan version is most popular in America, while the hatch appeals to the Europeans, but here in Australia, both body styles actually perform quite well. The Sedan is the higher selling variant, but both camps have their fans, and to be honest, I like both of them. While the performance and the driving dynamics are very similar between the Sportback and the Sedan, visually they certainly have their own character. And the other reason the RS3 Sedan is important is because it's actually the only 3-box traditional sedan that Audi sells with an RS badge. You can buy an RS5 Sportback or an RS7 Sportback, which are kind of sedan-ish, but they're actually hatchbacks. So if you want an RS car with a boot, it has to be an RS3 Sedan. Now, we've obviously got this very dramatic front end here, and much of that aero is functional, though there's some fake grillery at play, and sadly the uber cool new air outlet behind the front wheels is closed off and artificial. But beyond design, surely the reason you'd stump up probably six figures on the road for a new Audi RS3 is the staggering level of performance that this super hatch and super sedan offers. Audi's classic 2.5 litre inline 5-cylinder petrol engine with a turbo has been saved from the emissions demons this time around for at least one more generation, and Audi have improved almost every metric of this car's performance and the performance of the 2.5 TFSI motor. Power remains the same at 294 kilowatts as the outgoing version of the RS3, but torque has been bumped up by 20 newton meters to 500 newton meters. Now that's an important headline figure that matches the other super hatch, the AMG A45, but the Benz has more power from its 2-litre 4-cylinder engine. However, Audi is striking back, the performance wars aren't over yet in this part of the market, and the A45 is beaten, Audi say, by the RS3 on a 0 to 100 time of 3.8 seconds, delivered through the Soul gearbox, which is a 7-speed wet dual-clutch S-tronic automatic. Now, the body of the new RS3 sits dramatically 25 mils lower than a standard A3 and 10 mils lower again than an S3 that will beat it to market here in Australia by a few months. The S3 will arrive later this year. The RS3 will be in the first few months of 2022, we're told. Now, behind these big standard 19-inch alloy wheels with available Pirelli P0 Trofeo R semi-slicks for the first time are big brakes, either in standard or optional form. What's standard is 6-piston steel brakes, 375mm front discs, 310mm rear discs, but you can pay to have these substituted out for a ceramic braking system with slightly larger 380mm front discs and, of course, less fade. And if you do option those ceramic brakes, your top speed governor can be increased to 290 kilometers per hour, genuinely quite fast. Standard is 250, but there is a middle spec 280 km per hour top speed if you go for the performance package without the ceramic brakes. Now, standard in Australia but optional elsewhere will be the RS Sports exhaust system, which has variable opening flaps to allow either a softer or a louder noise, but unfortunately Audi says that the additional emissions control measures fitted to this engine, which go further than just a standard gasoline particulate filter, have silenced most of the pops and bangs that this engine was once known for. So it'll be interesting to see whether the aftermarket will have a solution for this here in Australia. Perhaps the most exciting innovation in the new RS3 is the all-new all-drive system. Audi's ditched the previous Haldex type system, which is still fitted to standard A3s and the new S3, for a new all-drive package called Torque Splitter that places a multiple disc clutch on each of the drive shafts, and this allows more torque to be sent rearward, and the fitment of a new drive mode called RS Torque Rear, which is a polite way of saying drift mode, basically. Up to 50% of the engine's torque can be sent to the rear axle, but 100% of that share can now be sent to either rear wheel. So you can send 250 newton meters from the engine to either of the rear wheels. Now, there's a new mode called Torque Rear, which is effectively drift mode, which will allow power oversteer much more easily than on the previous RS3, whereas there's also a button-down RS Performance mode, which aims to eliminate both oversteer and understeer to give you maximum precision for the fastest possible lap times. Inside, the new RS3 adds a number of high-performance touches over the standard underlying cabin structure from the latest Audi A3. The 12-inch virtual cockpit and 10-inch central touchscreen with physical climate controls, thankfully, all remain from the standard A3, but virtually everything in here gets a touch from the RS division. This includes the software that runs on the screens, particularly the virtual cockpit, which now includes a visual mode called RS Runway, and that brings higher speeds to the foreground. Plus you can add modules like showing your power and torque as a percentage of what the engine is able to generate. You can also set up shift lights for use in the paddle shifted manual mode for this gearbox. And speaking of those paddles, finally they're now metallic and they should feel a lot better to use. They're die-cast zinc and they sit behind a standard 3-spoke flat bottom steering wheel, which will be available in either leather or Alcantara. and the wheel now incorporates the RS mode button that we've seen quite a lot of recently on Audi's RS cars, which gives you quick access to one of two RS modes, and you can customize those to suit the kinds of roads you drive on. Then we've got these fine nappa leather seats, which look pretty comfortable. They now include electric adjustment for the first time on an RS3, which sounds crazy. Black is the base color for the leather, but the stitching can be selected in black, red or green, and going for the red or green highlight package also applies those colors to other elements in the interior. Audi's yet to tell us exactly what the new RS3 will cost in Australia, though the brand says the car will be priced at 60,000 euros as a Sportback, in Europe that is, and 62,000 euros as a sedan, and those prices currently correspond to $95,000 and $98,000 in the Australian currency. For reference, the last versions of the outgoing RS3 here in Australia were priced at $86,800 for the Sportback and $89,500 for the sedan. So if I was going to guess, I would put the new model somewhere between $95,000 and $100,000 when they arrive here in Australia. As for a release date, Audi says early 2022, but orders will likely open quite shortly. So that's our first look at the new 2022 Audi RS3, a car I'm pretty excited to drive. It keeps that classic Audi 5-cylinder engine and the dual clutch gearbox, but it adds a much more extroverted design and an all-new all-drive system with drift mode. Now I reckon this will be the last combustion RS3 we see, certainly the last one without a dedicated hybrid system. So tell me down below in the comments, are you considering picking up a new Audi RS3? While you're there, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.